Yeah. Welcome everybody. Chant later, listen now for a moment, okay? So, thank you all. First of all, we are here in Hartley House. It's founded in 1897. For close to 130 years, it's been our community center, the Heart of Health Kitchen. For generations, teaching English, providing skills to immigrants, summer camp for kids, activities for seniors, hosting all types of community organizations, from sewing groups, reading groups, block associations, to coalitions formed around major community issues like the Clinton Special Zoning District or the defeating the West Side Stadium. And Hartley House continues that tradition today. So welcome, we're here. Everybody for coming.
Like I said, welcome everyone to today's April 7th, 2026 City Council District 3 Candidate Forum. We are hosted today by the Hell's Kitchen Neighborhood Coalition, a group of local organizations who came together in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. The West Side Neighborhood Alliance, a group of grassroots tenants on the West Side, been fighting for tenants' rights since 2006, and housing conservation coordinators, who's also been fighting for tenants since the early 70s.
I just want to note that the members of the Health Kitchen Coalition are block associations, bids. Some of the block associations have been around for 50 years. So it's not like it's a new organization of organizations. I'm Joe Restuccia. I am a long-term committee member of the community board, and executive director of Clinton Housing Development Company.
Charlie Dulick, I'm the Director of Organizing at Housing Conservation Coordinators and help support the West Side Neighborhood Alliance.
And we are here today for City Council District 3, the west side of Manhattan. It goes from Spring Street up to the south side of West 55th, including the neighborhoods of the Village, the Meatpacking District, Madison Square, Chelsea, Hudson Yards, Times Square, and Hell's Kitchen. Anybody know Hell's Kitchen at all?
Okay, and on April 28th, there will be a special election to fill this council seat through December 2026. Then there will be a primary on June 23rd to select the candidate to run in the November 3rd general election to complete the council term through December 2029.
And tonight we have all 4 candidates here. Here, we have Leslie Boghosian Murphy, Lindsey Boylan, Layla Law-Gisiko, and Clara Wilson.
Thank you all for joining us here tonight, and thanks to the candidates for being here.
So the format for tonight, each candidate will get 2 minutes for an opening statement. All candidates will be asked the same questions, and each candidate will have 90 seconds to reply. Thanks to members of local block associations, the business improvement districts, members of the West Side Neighborhood Alliance. Everyone submitted questions, and we had to condense them into 10 questions for tonight. At the end, there will be a lightning round with 1-word answers. See how it goes. Ryan McConnell right in the front here from the Midtown South Precinct Council. She's the vice president. We'll keep time and alert the candidates and show a sign when 15 seconds are up. At the end, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. You've been to this many times before. We welcome you. So let's give her another round of applause for the candidate. I think I'll stand. I think we should stand when we ask questions, right? Okay, so the first area is public safety. Hello.
I guess I'll start. Full disclosure, everyone, I am a longtime member of HKNC, very proud member of HKNC. A lot of you know me. I'm Lindsey Boylan Murphy, running for City Council District 3. I've lived here in Hell's Kitchen for over 22 years with my husband, raising our 13-year-old daughter and our rescue dog Bailey, and I always include him, because you never know. All 4 of my grandparents fled Armenian genocide, and they came here to New York City looking for a better life. My grandfathers were both held what was considered immigrant jobs. One was a window washer and the other a factory worker. And I learned from a very, very young age of the fight they came to get here. It's just like all the immigrants back then, before them, and the ones we see now. It's the same exact story. It's just different groups of people. When I was little, my parents owned a small cheese store. So I know the value and hard work that goes into running a very small business. My mom used to wake up before dawn to go and string the Armenian cheese in the morning, and my dad came home way after dark. And I think that really instilled a community spirit and work ethic in me. And I think that really led me to my profession. I'm an Emmy Award-winning investigative journalist, a SAG-AFTRA member, proud SAG-AFTRA member. I traveled the world uncovering truths, giving voices to people who didn't have one. And I think that really leads me to where I am now, to today. My run here, my trajectory here, it really happened organically. I mean, I never had a job and I like leapfrogged and I want to be, you know, the mayor or anything, or a city council person. I started on my block association, and then I started volunteering at the local women and children's shelter that used to be here in Hell's Kitchen. And then Gail Brewer saw something in me and put me on the community board. So now I am very proud to say I am chair of Community Board 4, and I was voted in unanimously by my peers. If you know anything about community boards, you know that's virtually impossible, but it happened. So just so you know, I started the No Casinos Coalition here to stop casinos in Hell's Kitchen. I'm on Dr. Park Advisory Council, Port Authority, Bus Terminal Advisory Council, and I just want to be your council member, and I look forward to answering questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Lindsey Boylan. I'm a West Side mom and a career urban planner. And I came to New York and my career with one simple question in mind. How do we make New York work for everyone? How do we make it work for the most vulnerable first? I spent a decade almost managing public parks in the city and working in the bid space. So similar to some of the folks in the audience, thinking about questions of sanitation, chronic homelessness, programming, how we bring it all together. Then I moved into municipal finance, how you fund government, particularly after the financial crisis. I didn't want to have something I didn't understand. Then I went to work for the state as the housing and job secretary, helping to pass paid family leave, $15 minimum wage, and getting hundreds of millions of dollars for underfunded NYCHA in the city. And through all of that, I had a great career and great experience, but you probably know me much more for the work that I did fighting against Andrew Cuomo, being the first woman to come forward. What it taught me was that you're often standing alone. Sometimes the people standing with you are executive assistants, young women just in their first job out of college, not the most powerful people. And I think that's a really instructive tool at this moment in time. Sometimes the most courage and the most leadership we need is coming from the people who have the most to lose. I think we're in one of those moments right now in this city and in this country. I think municipal government is the one place where we can actually make change. It's not in Congress. It's right here in New York, whether we're talking about housing policy that actually centers New Yorkers getting true affordable housing, protecting NYCHA residents. We talk about resiliency in a district where half of it in Hell's Kitchen has some of the worst air quality, where we have some of the big resiliency issues. We're host to the central business district, but we're not getting all the benefits from it. And then fighting back against DC and all the anti-trans legislation, telling us how we can raise our children, denying gender affirming care, trying to fight against our immigrant communities and separate us. This is not how we are going to be as a city, and municipal government is how we fight that. I'm so excited to be here tonight and excited to represent you in the future. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to the organizers for this great event. My name is Layla Law-Gisiko. I am the president of the City Club, as well as the local district leader representing Chelsea. I'm your community organizer. I came to New York 29 years ago. I came with 2 large duffel bags and my heart full of hope. New York became my community, and the city has given me so much. I was born in a multi-ethnic family in Paris. My mother is from Tunisia, my father is from France. And I am a journalist and a writer and a documentary director by profession. You probably know me better for the fighter that I am. I've been a member of my local community board for 19 years, and I have shown you how I fight. Together, forming a coalition. Many of you are actually in the room who are part of this coalition. We fought against a terrible plan to bulldoze 6 city blocks around Penn Station. And we took the Empire State to court and we won. And now this plan is retired and a better plan has emerged that is actually progressing. More recently, you have known me for being the person who has fought alongside public housing tenants. Some of them are here with us, friends, supporters, whose voices have very, very often been ignored. And I am fighting the demolition of their homes. They want to stay in their homes. They have made it very clear. And this is really a big driver and the reason why I am running. I really believe that the people of New York, the people of our community deserve a voice. I want to be a representative of this voice, not of special interest. And I want to make sure that this district and Hell's Kitchen embraces the diversity that has been the core of the culture of this community. And it would be my honor to represent you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Carl Wilson. I'm running to be council member for Hell's Kitchen Chelsea in the West Village, a community that I have spent the better part of a decade serving, previously as chief of staff to Councilmember Botcher, and then before that as the Hell's Kitchen and Chelsea liaison for then Councilmember Corey Johnson. I've spent my career day by day using the mechanisms of government to deliver results for the people of this district. But I didn't start that way. I came to New York, that old story, to be an actor. And I lived that life for a while. I waited tables, I hustled during the day, waited tables at night, just trying to make it in the city that I love. And I found out very quickly how difficult that can be. But everything changed for me after the 2016 presidential election. I felt an immense call to urgency to fight for government, fight for civics, leadership, for people who care about these things. If you care about them, you've got to get off the sidelines and join the fight. And that's what I did. I started organizing here in the community, eventually with a ragtag group of activists, many of whom are here in this room, created the Hell's Kitchen Democrats, which took on the entrenched political power of the McManus Club. We ran district leaders, we beat them, and we're still a progressive home for civics right here on the west side. I'm very proud of that. I'm running because we have a housing and affordability crisis that is pushing our city to the brink. It is pushing out the communities that help build them, particularly artists and LGBT communities right here in this district. We have a transit system that could work better for us, especially when we're talking about buses and the accessibility and the reliability of our transit network. We also have a terrible, terrible fascist threat from Washington, targeting the communities that have long called New York home, targeting the most vulnerable among us, immigrants and the LGBT community. So I'm in this fight for you. I'm in the fight for the New York City that's given me so much, and I'm eager to get back to them. And as your council member, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I look forward to your questions tonight. Thank you.
So I'm gonna start tonight, question about public safety and concentration of social services. By the way, when we run tonight, we'll start, go down the row, next one, start, go down the row, so we'll get a chance to speak first. In 2025, the Midtown South Precinct led the city in felony arrests. There are 15 social service locations serving thousands of clients on 8th Avenue from West 34th to West 45th Streets, a clear over concentration. While many locations are well managed, others are not. For example, the Times Square Hotel and the West Midtown Medical Group on West 35th have become hotspots for NYPD narcotics arrests and assaults. What specific actions will you take to reduce crime and restore public safety in this vital corridor of our district?
Thank you. Well, this is one of the reasons why we started HKNC, was for this specific reason. It really bore out of COVID. After COVID, when COVID started, we saw that there was a concentration of social services that the city was providing along these corridors in the 30s. And that was because they had to separate a lot of shelter residents, and they concentrated them all in one area. That was homeless shelters, temporary homeless shelters, and also social services. And what happened was, when it's all concentrated in one area, the area that you're talking about, Joe, is that, you know, it's a chicken or the egg, right? It's, do they all come and then they all get services, but then they stay and then there's nowhere for them to go? And that we have seen since COVID, that problem. So what we're gonna do for public safety, I have always said for public safety, is to get cops out of cars and on foot. And I have said that in every single community council precinct meeting. I want to give a shout out to Brian Weber over there, who actually heads up the Midtown South Precinct Community Council, who started a lot of this. So I think what we have to do is work collectively with our precincts and our electeds to address these issues of both the concentration of social services and how we're going to address it in a public safety way.
I've also noticed in this district, Hell's Kitchen seems to be taking on a lot of the burden for a lot of these things, whether it's as the transit center for the city, the air quality problems we have here, the lack of green space in our public parks. Even the parks aren't entirely green space aside from Dwight Clinton. And I can tell you, representing more than just Hell's Kitchen, that you're bearing the brunt of a lot of this. And so I think, in addition to many of the good comments that Leslie has made, we need to push back and say we cannot concentrate all of these things in one part of the district even. And that is some part of the responsibility. Obviously, we fight to have it be more spread across the city as well. But there seems to always be, in the central business district and surrounding here, the idea that we can contain all of this, that we can take it on. And that's just not right. And I think for far too long, Hell's Kitchen, I'm seeing in many conversations, this ends up happening again and again. And that's an additional thing I would push for, having in the bid space for 31st Street Partnership and then Bryant Park with Midtown South. I would work closely with them on crime stats, seeing what we can do with the existing challenges that we have and move away from, you know, whatever we can do to improve that. But I think we do have to move some of this concentration of locations, because it's just not right and it's not fair that Hell's Kitchen's taking on the burden.
Thank you. I think we all concur that fair share is something that is really important, and Hell's Kitchen is doing more than their fair share, and this is an issue. But to answer the question specifically as to what can be done, a couple of points. The first one, let's take the example of the Times Square Hotel. The hotel was set up actually to have 50% of the residents being low income, rent regulated, and 50% supportive housing. This proportion has shifted. Today, there are 75% supportive housing. This is not acceptable. So HPD has a role to play. We need to better monitor these kinds of situations at a granular level. But furthermore, in terms of the oversight of the supportive housing facilities, they're lagging. And I think that putting some sort of a oversight mechanism that ties to the budget that these supportive housing facilities receive is really important, and it's going to play a critical role so that we improve the quality of the service that is delivered at these facilities. Furthermore, I think that enforcement is going to have to play an important role in these situations. I'm very proud actually to have the endorsement of the Times Square Hotel Tenants Association president. And this is no coincidence. I understand how these issues can be put together and how enforcement and supportive services can work together.
So over the course of my career in the council, I have worked to address some of these issues that we have seen come as a result of the clustering of services, which is in fact not the best way to set up social services. It doesn't help the clients. It doesn't help the community. So moving forward, that needs to be front of mind when we're thinking about siting for future sites. There is an enforcement piece. We'll work closely with our precinct commanders at like Midtown South, Midtown North, the 10th precinct, and make sure we're advocating for the resources that they need. We also know that the city agencies play a role in this. When I was in the council, we worked to set up and expand the Midtown Hub along 8th Avenue, which was a regular meeting of all of the social service agencies and enforcement agencies that they met repeatedly, regularly. Brian gets another shout out because he co-chairs that. So we saw that work. We can scale that up and continue to expand it to places that continue to see this kind of street activity that is not what we want to see. There is also the providers also have a responsibility here. And when they are not meeting up their end of the bargain, they need to be held accountable. And they need to not stop caring about what happens at their property line. They have to be outward facing. They have to meet with the community regularly, have strong community advisory committees. And when they're not doing that, the council member, as the advocate for this community, needs to escalate that and take it to the agency. So I will work with the mayor, HPD, DSS, when those come arise, because I know how to do it, because I've been doing it for almost 10 years.
We're going to continue on in the social service area. Lindsey was the first answer. There has been a clustering of shelters and social services on certain blocks of Hell's Kitchen. Can you hear me now? No?
Yeah.
There, I will speak up, ma'am. There has been a clustering of shelters and social services on certain blocks in the district. How will you make sure that neighborhood concerns are not overridden by city agencies and New York City's fair share requirements are met? This has been an ongoing issue. We just get overruled.
Well, I think it ties to my original answer to the other question as an outset. I think Hell's Kitchen has taken on far too much of the burden as an outset issue. Working very closely with most of the housing folks in this administration when I oversaw HCR, which is the state's version of HPD. Dina Levy, who's now the head of HPD, was there. I think she's very focused on tenants' rights and advocacy. So I think we have a real partner there to work with. And I know her very well. So I think that is a first step that I would go to Dina Levy. And I think that you will see in this administration, they're doing these bad landlords meetings. I think that you will have, and we will have an ear to focus much more so on this issue. And the fair share issue is one that on every single front, Hell's Kitchen is bearing the brunt of all of these issues. And it's simply because it's accessible It's near the central business district and it's always been done this way. So it's like, it's worse for that perspective. I would also support all of the bids in the district who are having to do this extra work and do line share and block associations, because they have information in addition to the precincts on what is going wrong and how it's happening.
15 seconds.
Work in consultation with them and push the city as much as I need to, having had these relationships with the folks, especially in housing.
I think we are very much in agreement here. We spoke about fair share, I think that these issues are vexing. They're really difficult. They've been ongoing for a long time. What typically works is when you actually put a lot of effort and you don't give up. And bringing a holistic approach, bringing everybody in the room, bringing PD, bringing sanitation, transportation, human services, but also bringing DEA, escalating, bringing the district attorney, the attorney general. Let's bring all hands so that we can tackle the issue until it is resolved. There are other chronic issues in the district that are not in Hell's Kitchen, and very much the same dynamic. We know that when everyone is focusing on the issue, eventually something gives in. Some creative something will happen. I think that the drive to really stay focused on the issue, not just because we have seen improvement, but really tackling it until it gives. Working also with the community boards, the bids, really bringing everybody to the table is going to deliver those results. And I know how to do that very well. And I think this is going to, create a path forward that will alleviate these issues.
So social service programs have a place in our overall mental health, public health fabric and network, right? But it's no good if they're not set up for success. So clusterings of multiple services on one block is not a good idea. I was here during COVID, working in the council when 3 single adult men shelters were placed very quickly for emergency reasons on 36th Street. But that was very difficult for the community and the block to absorb. So we have a new mayor now. We have a new mayor who I think cares a little bit more about community. And so I would propose that we have a meeting, the community board and the new heads of DSS. We should look at that map together. We should understand where this clustering has happened and talk about what the future planning goals are and how can we better facilitate communication about how these things are opening, how these things are being planned. That's really what it's all about. I've often seen that the service organizations, and Joe, I know you have too in the board, they silo. They don't talk to one another. It's really bizarre when they're all kind of working on the same problem. So it's how do you break down those walls, get them to care about their community and beyond their
15
property line,
seconds.
as I said, and work with the partners in the community so that they fit, they deliver the services for their clients, and they're good neighbors to the rest of us. It can be done, but as Layla says, it just takes some hard work and not giving up.
Thank you. So there's a very easy answer to this question. It's political will. It's political will. It's having a strong city council member. That's how we're not going to be overridden by city agencies that are putting these abundance of social services in one particular area in Hell's Kitchen. And I think I'm the only person on this stage that can speak to this, maybe Carl as well, that have been on these walkthroughs. To go through the right? A lot of walkthroughs through these streets to see what's going on. I have been in these meetings every single week with HKNC talking about specific areas. I have been to the community council meetings, the north and south precincts. I have talked to the city agencies. I have talked to the precinct commanders. I have been very, very diligent on this one particular issue for all the reasons that the candidates are saying today. And Joe, we've talked about this a lot. We've written letters. We've done a lot of pushback on these city agencies, hoping that our elected officials will follow through on it. Well, guess what? If I become city council member, I will follow through on my own follow through. So I think there's a simple answer to that. And I think everything that everyone said here are good steps, but you really have to push
15
back
seconds.
at the agencies and make them see what we have here on the ground in Hell's Kitchen is not tenable. It's just not. And it's fair share, like Lindsay said, is the way to go. Thank you.
So we're gonna continue with the social service theme, but we're gonna get a lot more specific, right? We see people in the streets suffering from mental illness. They are not being cared for, and they're not able to care for themselves. Frequently, their illnesses become a public safety risk for New Yorkers. Involuntary hospitalization as a last resort is one option that can be used both to protect these individuals and district residents. What is your position on this approach? Layla.
Huge and very controversial issue, but I really believe that when the situation is needed, there has to be some sort of an intervention. It has to be done in a way and regulated in a way that is incredibly careful with lots of recourses and appeals. Because it is obviously a civil rights issue and a serious one. But I think that, not addressing the mental illness, the mental health issue is actually not going to get us into a better place. But furthermore, I think that, there is also an issue with not follow through with care. To take an example, most people who suffer from homelessness are also suffer from addiction. We know how to get people off drugs. We know how to rehab. And what is missing very often is actually the follow through after the treatment. And you see people relapsing because, to take once again the example of the Times Square Hotel, we know that there are drug dealers and people are released to the facility, and the drug dealer will prey on them and they will relapse. So I think that there has to be a more holistic approach with healthcare that actually patients will embrace and that will help with the issue.
Yeah.
I have a similar position. I believe that it is not progressive to watch somebody decompensate on the sidewalk. It is not progressive to sit idly by while people are having traumatic mental health episodes that make them dangerous to themselves or others. So involuntary confinement removal is a tool that we can use, but there is the question of what happens next, right? They can be stabilized in a hospital bed, but if there is not sustained outpatient treatment that can further stabilize them and then eventually prepare them for housing, we're not going to get very far. In fact, we're going to be stuck in a loop that a lot of us are in right now. We're all New Yorkers. We all walk down the sidewalk and we see this stuff happen. We see them disappear and then they come back again. So it's about building out that infrastructure to further prepare people for housing eventually. And you have to prepare folks for housing. You can't just walk into, get an apartment and walk in and expect to, remain and flourish and be a healthy, thriving adult. You've got to also then have the wraparound services like groups like CH Clinton Housing, CHDC do very well. So we've got to build all of that out, and we're not there yet. But I think with sustained effort and partnership with the mayor, the state level, and at the council, we could make progress on this.
So I do believe that we should explore the involuntary hospitalization. I do think it's cruel, actually, to leave people in the street who cannot make decisions for themselves properly. I really do. If we're expecting people who have severe mental health issues to say, hey, I'm going to come in and I want to get treatment, then that's not the path we're going down, because they can't make those decisions for themselves. We have to wrap our arms around them and we have to take care of them. And I do not think that is a controversial point at all, actually. I think it's our obligation. I think the new mayor saw this when you took a hands-off approach and 15 people died from freezing this past winter on the street. They died, and he changed his tune very quickly on that. And I think it just illustrated what we're facing. I think the problem is, though, it's not having that enacted. It's where are the beds? A while ago, years ago, they took these psychiatric beds away because they didn't want to warehouse people, which was the right thing to do because that's what was happening. They were warehousing mental health patients and it was like inmates. It was awful, awful. But I think now we don't have the beds to put the people in because of those safeguards. And we have to look at that again. So first, what we have to do is we have to get the beds because there's nowhere to put these people. So once we change that and get the beds, then I think we can actually make a dent in helping these people help themselves because it's our responsibility to do that.
Time's up.
Thank you.
I think it was important as a last resort. I don't think it's a tool. I am very uncomfortable with using it, the terminology of a tool, as if involuntary hospitalization is something we should be broadly adopting to people that we view as problematic in society. I think that's a very slippery slope. As a last resort is a very different way to describe this, and anything other I'm just not comfortable with. I think we have a huge issue around homelessness, chronic homelessness, which is very different than homelessness. We have a lot of people who cannot afford housing. We also have a lot of people who are experiencing chronic homelessness who have multi challenges, whether it be dealing with addiction, whether it be dealing with mental illness. And the answer to that is not involuntary hospitalization for every single person. And I'm not suggesting anyone has said that. I just want to be very clear that that is not something we should pursue writ large. And I think as we're talking about our own civil liberties in this country, we have to be very careful on that front. And it does not mean that I care any less about chronic homelessness. It does not mean that I have any less experience of how we do supportive housing, wraparound services. I think the mayor is very focused on it. It's part of the end goal of freeing up policing to do more serious violent offenses and instead focus community care on our actual community members who need that additional help. And I just want to be very careful about that conversation.
We have one more.
No, I said I think
Yes. So, one more in the same area, balancing homeless integration and the housing first model. Our community has long supported integration of homeless apartments into both affordable and market rate developments. That's what we're known for before it became fashionable. And it's been a success. But now the housing first model for homeless placement does not mandate participation in social services. Without adequate or tenant mandated social services, the consequence in our district has resulted in a lack of success for both clients and severe safety consequences for other tenants.
To list just a few examples that tenants or organizations have dealt with, we have fires, broken front doors, police activity, and assaults on other tenants in buildings as diverse as the West 49th Street. Tenements between 8th and 9th, the SRO at 300 West 48th Street, and affordable building on 500 West 42nd Street, and the 7030 New Maybury on West 40th and 10th.
That's a broad range of types of housing. How would you change this policy to ensure client success, tenant safety, integration into neighborhood buildings?
Well, if someone is being, given an apartment and has a high social service need, there should be those services on site to deal with that need. And if that is not happening, and as you've pointed out just now with that list of examples, then that needs to change. And also the provider should have the ability to better understand the history of the individual that's being given that apartment so that they could have some discretion and understanding, okay, well, this person, we don't have that's not the right fit for this housing. We need to figure out something else. Because again, if you're putting someone there without the services, if you're not setting them up for success, it's not going to work. And it's also gonna cause frictions and problems with neighbors and with other tenants that live in the building that don't have that and have that level of need. So we need to have some better communication between our providers and the agencies that are making these referrals so that more information is shared so that they are better prepared to take this person on. And where that's not happening, we need to have some tough conversations with the agencies and the providers. We need to be meeting with them regularly. We need to meet with them regularly and work through how we can do this. And we've done some of that at many locations, particularly on 49th Street recently. but that's what it takes, repeated engagement on this.
I think you said that very well, Carl. I agree with you. I actually do. I think Carl said that very well, and I agree with him on many of those points. I do think the housing first model is a good model, though. I do think there are benefits to it, but I am a very big supporter of the proper social services, right place, right time, like Carl said. So the housing first model, if anyone knows, it's just housing first, regardless whether you have the social services set up or not. And that is where it gets very sticky. These people who do need social services, that is the key to getting people at a better place. It's the key to getting people in a better place and to addressing their specific issues, whether it's addiction issue, whether it's a childcare issue. It doesn't always have to be a mental health issue. There are a lot of different social services that can be addressed for sure. And I do think that's the linchpin to getting people not just into housing, but to keep them in housing, because that's what we want to do. We don't want to get them in, we want to keep them there. So I do think the social services and having them is a component that is very important. The other thing I do want to say about it, though, is sometimes they mix people
15 seconds.
with the levels of the social services they need, and that is a little bit of a danger area as well. Meaning sometimes you have people in the same building or the same floor that have severe needs and some that don't. And that's where the conflict is very difficult, and we should avoid that as well.
I think it's important to supportive housing to get everyone in housing, but it's absolutely acceptable to ensure that people are getting services once they're in. It's not just for themselves, but for everyone in the same facility. So I think that is a baseline. It's the same reason why we have kids and getting vaccinated for schools. It's the same reason baseline. I mean, we have to weigh the community needs and all of these other things together. And as someone who's very focused on civil rights, as you just heard me answer, I think this is a completely acceptable community answer to come to. Getting people in housing is one thing, keeping them in, there should be some baseline. And the whole point of the definition of supportive housing is the wraparound services. So it's not just getting them in a house alone. I think that's essential and necessary. We should move in that direction.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that was said. The best investment that one can do is actually, once you house people, providing the services so that they can thrive and they can remain, stably housed is critical. So the housing first model is great, but it has to be the housing first and services provided, and one cannot be done without the other. And we know that fiscally it is a responsible thing to do. We know that housing people is actually the most effective and best use of our tax dollars. And to make it work even better, the best use of our tax dollars is actually to provide those services. Treating people or incarcerating people cost way more, is morally way less acceptable than housing them with dignity and providing them the services that they need. So I think that this is something that at the fiscal level, at the budget level, when those negotiations happen, it is very critical to be able to advocate for the services and, especially in Hell's Kitchen, given that Hell's Kitchen does way more than its fair share.
15 seconds.
We have just one quick follow-up question for all the candidates. In two of the circumstances, West 49th and the Mayberry, there are no social services, and that, I believe, is an irresponsible placement. But on the others, the social service providers get all the information, but they are told they cannot. They must accept someone who is inappropriate for that location. I ask you as candidates, if you were referred someone who you knew you could not serve, the current policy of Housing First says you must take them. What would you do, Carl? We'll run the.
Well, look, I think this is a very legitimate question. And in fact, I've met in, my time in the council, met with the state network for supportive housing, who brought up this very specific issue, that they were becoming, like, in many cases, dumping grounds for folks because that they couldn't serve. So look, we need to have a higher level conversation about this. We need to bring HPD, we need to bring DSS, we need to bring the mayor's housing team. all to the table to figure out how we can resolve this, because this is a pretty significant flaw in the system right now, and it's causing it to operate in a way that it's not meant to operate. So we need to have a meeting of the minds and try to figure this out, and I would be committed to facilitating that conversation as council member.
So the main reason why they're doing this is because they don't have space. They have nowhere to put these people. That's why they're doing it. It's an overflow of the system, for sure. So that now they're just putting them in places where they're not supposed to be. And that is a faulty system. That is a faulty system. So, yes, we also have to, though, on the flip side of it, we have to be very careful, because there are some providers that take members or, patients or, clients, thank you, that they know they can't provide for them, and they take them anyway. And they do that on a purely financial basis. I'm not saying all social service providers do that at all, but that is what is happening. That is the reality. They're doing it for, it's for their bottom line sometimes, because it depends on how much money the city will give them, how many clients they have, and I can, go into the weeds on this, but that's the reason. And that is a very dangerous reason. That's why we need so much oversight, and checks and balances on them. And I have done that as a civilian, and I promise to do that as a city council person for sure.
I think this is a real opportunity in this administration. There's a real focus on chronic homelessness and the humanity of people experiencing it. And as someone who has worked closely with this administration, I think that there is an opportunity to say, we can't sustain this in this system. And we shouldn't have to take people who are not going to succeed here and may impact the health and safety of the rest of the population. And if they want to do a moonshot as they do on housing, supportive housing is a huge part of that. And my understanding is that's a big priority. And I think if the mayor wants to make this a huge priority, we make this the challenge. How do we right size locations? How do we ensure that the wraparound service part of supportive housing is actually happening, and we are able to scale up the need that we have? And there are a lot of empty supportive housing locations too. And that is another travesty too, because we are not connecting the logistical resources. There's so many people who want to be helpful and have the time to do so and have the permits with the city, but we're not connecting the resources. So I think that's part of the problem.
I think it's an incredibly complicated issue, because sorting people is incredibly controversial. Giving the opportunity for a provider to refuse certain patients then leads into some really sticky and slippery slopes. And I think that, oversight is not always the forte of a government. So I think that, we on the ground know what's going on in these facilities. And I would be probably a little bit reluctant to legislate and to create a sort of like one size fits all, while also giving the opportunity to create the right balance with people in the field, with the community boards, with the social actors, who can then help a facility strike the right balance. Because it is untenable when you have a cluster of severely mentally ill patients in the same facility and not receiving the support that they need. So I think that, we need to have the balance. It needs to be done at the local level. And we need to make sure that, civil rights are always, front and center in the way we approach these issues, while keeping in mind the collective, making sure that the entire community, the entire ecosystem of the building is sustainable.
We're gonna shift to housing. Building more housing, market rate and affordable. It's back to list, yes. Between 2005 and 2025, in Hell's Kitchen, 19,827 market rate apartments were built and 6,247 affordable apartments were built. That's a record in the city. We all support building more housing, but we didn't do it through slogans saying we need more housing. So,
where in District 3 would you support more housing development, both market rate and affordable? And where, if anywhere, would you oppose it? B, specific locations matter.
Sure, thank you. We're going through, well, we just went through a ULURP right now with DeWitt Clinton North. Two towers are going up, they're buying development rights from Hudson River Park Trust. And they are building, units, in market rate and affordable are gonna be included there. And I was part of those ULURP discussions and I actually talked to the developers. Joe, you were part of those discussions as well. And I wanted to highlight that we needed family size units because of all the affordable units that our district has, guess how many are family units? Almost zero, and that's deliberate, by the way, by developers. That we don't have working class units and we don't have family units, but you want specific site K, it's coming up, it's a state-owned site, it's by Jacob Javits. That is going to be a huge lot of affordable housing. It's gonna be a lot more too. It's gonna be market rate as well. We also have, let me remember, an empty site across from the Intrepid. Also, is that state-owned as well, right? State-owned as well. It's a parking lot now. And I think that is a specific location that we can look to build more affordable housing. I mean, we have done the work. When I say we, the community board and really, land use committee, has done the work. We have a
15
very strong, housing plan for community board 4. We have identified the locations. I mean, lot and street, and we know who owns it and what we can do with it. And I think we can act on it, and we
Time's
have,
up.
and that's why we've had the success that we have.
I was amazed and impressed to learn that this community board district, Hell's Kitchen, has provided more affordable housing than most of the city in the last, decade and more. So that is a win. That's a huge win. But the plans and the way that we've approached it is the idea that if you just build, we will work our way out of the affordable housing crisis. We haven't met that yet. We haven't met, I just saw a studio of a base level apartment. They were asking in Hell's Kitchen $9,000 for a base level apartment for rent. And I just, that is beyond. We are not at the threshold of meeting the willingness to pay and backing away from the stock so that becomes suddenly more affordable at market rate. And 421A, which is the program that got us some of this housing, is not going to be the way of the future. That means getting 80% market rate, 20% affordable. The state has recognized that is not working us out of the baking into the cake of lack of affordability. And I think we shouldn't be prioritizing any market rate in this district at all. It seems pretty straightforward to me. I think that more of the district, this is another case, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, Hell's Kitchen has provided more than its fair share of 15 affordable seconds. housing. We need to find ways in the rest of the district to do that are not just giveaways to big developers. There's one project being contemplated in the meatpacking district that is 3 times the height of the standard, has little to no affordable housing. We don't need that. Time's up. We don't need it.
My position is very clear. Public land is actually for public good. There should be no market rates on publicly owned sites. We have tons of tools in the toolbox, the Mitchell-Lama program, community land trust, which, I would be so delighted to sign on to the bill and get it passed again. We know how to produce affordable housing, truly, deeply, permanently affordable housing. Penn South is a good model. We can build Section 8 housing on publicly owned land. We can invest and recommit to public housing. Section 9, traditional public housing is the gold standard. Yes, it is the gold standard. We can actually build new public housing. We haven't reached the threshold, and with a proper investment, we can absolutely do that and recommit to that. I don't know that market rate really has a place in housing policy. Market rate is great. If someone wants to own a site and build a building, by all means, go ahead. This is great, but this is not what we should bank on to
15
solve
seconds.
our affordability crisis, because it is not a housing crisis. It is an affordability crisis. And I think we have to be very clear about that, and we have to be very intentional, because the market does not care.
Time's up.
And therefore, we need strong public policy.
So specifically to this district, we, as has been stated, this community has really been a leader in housing production and affordable housing production. And we have done it without compromising the historic and architectural nature of our oldest buildings. The Clinton Special District has been very successful in that way. So I think we don't need to look there. I think we can use the Community Board 4's housing plan, which has been very meticulously thought out as a model for good community planning and a way to generate housing and, most importantly, affordable housing. There's many sites we still need to get to. There's the Quill Bus Depot, there's Site K, there's the Intrepid site, there is the Marshalling Yards, there's the Hunter College eyesore on 40th Street that just drives me nuts. And we could also do things like consider a residential rezoning for the western side of 11th Avenue. So there are steps that we can take, that we can do thoughtfully. We can do it as a community. And I want to have the community board at my side and working in partnership as we pursue those sites. But it can't just be us.
15 seconds.
The whole city has got to chip in here. District 3 cannot get New York out of its affordability and housing crisis alone. So we need policies at the city level that encourage that as well.
So we're going to talk about the heart of Hell's Kitchen, the Clinton Special Zoning District. The core preservation area of this district, from West 43rd to West 56th Streets, west of 8th to west of 10th, has approximately 22,810 apartments, the majority of which are rent regulated. Rent regulation protects affordability. These buildings and their tenants are protected through special zoning, prohibiting demolition, strong anti-harassment, and overall building height limits.
The 2024 City of Yes, remember that one, which was passed over the objection of Community Board 4, increased these height limits for the first time in 50 years. We're now seeing buildings marketed with development rights available, meaning buildings are being sold to increase height and therefore increase existing tenants' risk of displacement. How would you fix this issue? And more generally, how can you protect tenants from displacement while also supporting new housing?
So I was not a fan of City of Yes. I think there are lots of people who think that the goals may have been noble, but the implementation was flawed. I think this is an example of that. As a career urban planner, the Clinton Special District is one that I studied early on in my career and is a model, not just in the city, but in the country. And I think preserving rent regulation, preserving all of the protections, actually, and fully investing the budget to right to counsel, all of the things that protect individually tenants and also go back to protecting this special district and other ones like it in the city, although this is a particularly special district, having studied it. I think everything that we can do should be done. And going back to my last answer about how this idea that we were going to supply side ourselves out of the housing crisis is a faulty way of looking at it. Not to suggest that the work that's been done isn't helpful, but that's not the way forward. And what we see is the bonus things that have been done and the workarounds really are not benefiting affordability. They're benefiting market rate and luxury to that end, not just market rate. So everything we can do to undo the giveaways, I think, is really important, and protecting our tenants and
15
also
seconds.
supporting fully in the budget right to counsel, because not enough tenants. I mean, even in the case of NYCHA, one of the biggest concerns, in addition to the demolition and the question around it, is pushing people out of their homes increases 5 times
Time's up.
once it goes to private developers. So we need to ensure that we have the ability to protect tenants on the tenant side, not developers.
So, City of Yes, in my opinion, is a disaster. It really is going to hurt District 3. And it's very unfortunate that more safeguards were not put into the text. It could have been done at the time it was negotiated. Unfortunately, it wasn't. If I had been the council member, I would have voted no, or I would have actually tried to vote yes by improving the text substantially to get to a version that would have been acceptable, especially for the Clinton Special District. I think this is incredibly detrimental. It is putting a lot of pressure, and what I would do as the council member is that I would actually introduce a rezoning. And I would actually bring back these protections and introducing them into the text. It would probably not be very popular, but I would really work very, very hard with my colleagues at the city council to actually accomplish what really should have happened last year. But you know, a lost battle is not a lost cause, and I will always fight the good fight, even when people tell me that it is a done deal or that it is worthless. I really believe in the importance of always fighting. Yeah, rezone and bring back what we had.
So in the Clinton special, the anti-harassment and the protections and the demolition protections are really, really key. And to me, this is a resource question in a lot of ways, because we need to have agencies that are going to enforce these with this text within the zoning. So that's been a problem in the past. Joe and I know, particularly around some of the demolition issues. So we need to work to ensure that our agencies have the staffing and the resources to be able to fully protect this. I mean, we had a handful of demolitions that slipped through the cracks at DOB.
15.
Yeah, a lot. Well,
50.
so we worked to, we had a number of meetings with DOB, and eventually they've, put a system into their software that flags this application so that we can make sure that it does go through the special permit process if there is a demolition that is a permit that's pulled for this. So we need to have our agencies up and running so things are not slipping through the cracks here. And then also, I
15
agree
seconds.
with Lindsey about making sure our tenant protections and access to legal services for them are scaled up and fully funded at the city level, and the council members should be looking at how they can do that in their budget allocations as well.
So I was part of the community board that actually voted against the city of Yes as well. And I thought it had two very glaring bad issues. One, it was a one size fits all. And that does not work anywhere in the city. It was a one size fits all policy. The second, there's no guaranteed affordable housing units in the city of Yes, which we just talked about. It was just, builds and different zoning. I think where we went wrong for the Clintons, and sorry, Carl, I think there were council members that fought for their districts. I think there were council members in Queens. I think there were council members in Brooklyn that identified special needs in their districts, and they fought for them, and they got different, hooks in the city of Yes to protect them. Unfortunately, we did not get that here in West Virginia. So, and not saying that again, I'm just saying that's just what happened. So as council member, I think like what Layla says, I think we have to really preserve the Clinton special district. And I think that the council member who will be sitting in that seat has to be very aware of the history there. They have to be very aware of the specialness of that special district. And I think that's where the city of Yes comes in. And I think that's where it's very important for the council member to understand those differences and protect with the tenant protections, but also the building protections as well. I think I just want that.
Landmarks designation preservation. Chelsea has multiple historic districts. Hell's Kitchen has none. Since 2019, Hell's Kitchen community has advocated establishing a Hell's Kitchen historic district. We are a neighborhood of tenements, brownstones, houses of worship, and community centers, such as Hartley House, where we are today. None of these are protected in that way. These locations have a distinct sense of place and embody the history of New York's immigrant experience from the 1840s to the 1950s. Would you advocate for a landmark designation for parts of Hell's Kitchen?
Okay, that's very simple and emphatic, yes. As the president of the City Club of New York, I have been fighting for historic preservation. And as the former chair of the Landmarks Committee of Community Board 5 for, I think I was chair for like 12 years, I have done the job of advocating. I understand the issues. I understand the research that needs to go into these designations, these requests for evaluation for historic designation, I will be your staunchest advocate for historic preservation. Historic preservation is really important. It's really important to understand that, it is not setting the district in place and not allowing growth. It is on the contrary, actually helping the district grow in an organic fashion, keeping a sense of place. And this is really, really important. We don't need to obliterate a district to let it grow and evolve. Adaptive reuse is a prime example. Take a building that is no longer serving its function, adaptively reuse it, make it something else, turn a factory into housing. That's what they did with West Bath, and it worked wonders.
15 seconds.
So I will be your historic preservation champion. I understand the value of the historic fabric of Hell's Kitchen. It is in black ink in the ledger,
Time's
and
up.
I will protect it.
I will also add an emphatic yes to this as well. Look, this is my community. This is where I live. This is where I've lived for the better part, longer than a decade. For me, it's very important that we protect the historic and cultural sensitive sites here in this community. There's a number of them that have been identified by Community Board 4 and the Historic Districts Council. We need to fight to get those over the line. And we do that by fully funding LPC so that we're Landmarks Preservation Commission. So we're not hearing excuses about backlog or lack of staffing, that they can't get to it. That's not acceptable. We have to push for this and fully fund it in the budget. And also, we need to get the Patty's Market Historic District done. That will be a priority of mine, and I hope to work with my partners in the community and on Community Before so that we can accomplish that.
You're not gonna get any pushback from me on this one. Absolutely 100% yes. I think not everyone, but a lot of people know, you know where I stand on this. I talked about my immigrant family. My husband's family came from Ireland, very, very poor family. And my father-in-law, deceased now, grew up in Hell's Kitchen. I will or will not confirm that he was associated with the Westies. But I said I will not confirm that. But he grew up here in Hell's Kitchen. We're talking, generations ago. And I'm glad you brought up Patty's Market. That one stretch is a very important stretch. But absolutely, and what we talked about before, we have already shown we can produce housing without tearing down the special, districts. We've already shown that we have produced most of the affordable housing in the city, as Joe pointed out before. So we are an example already of how it can be done. So I definitely really, really value the history, the stories, the generations. That's what makes a place a neighborhood. And it what brings people together. And I really think out of all
15 seconds.
Hell's Kitchen has that neighborhood, our block associations, or that community. Manhattan Plaza, a lot of people are here today too. I mean, that's what really makes Hell's Kitchen special. So I am very, very well aware of that. And yes, I would advocate for the landmark designations for parts of Hell's Kitchen, for sure.
So the original impetus for going into urban planning was because I read Jane Jacobs' The Death and Life of the Great American City, and she is all about how you preserve and protect what is most valuable in the city. There are debates about what exactly she means in that, but what she means is protect a place like Hell's Kitchen. And as I door knock throughout the district, you get a chance to look when you're on the 5th floor at a beautiful facade. When you're on the 4th floor, you see a different facade, seeing a lot of it. It's an incredible district with an amazing history. And frankly, now is just the right time to preserve it and protect it further with landmark status in several areas, because this is becoming a more and more lucrative area to develop. Not that it wasn't before, but it's only going to get harder to protect. And now is the time to do it. It follows a great history of waterfront redevelopment, industrial redevelopment. It's right on track for time to do preservation here. It follows what has happened in other areas of the city, West Village included. When I managed Bryant Park, we had a landmark status as well. So it's actually a lot of fun protecting these great public realm, whether it's just the public realm or housing as well. And I think Hell's Kitchen is the city's immigrant story, as Leslie said, and it's worthy of our protection and 15 seconds.
We're gonna continue on housing, but getting a little more complicated. The Western Rail Yards, the related companies giveaway. In 2009, in order to rezone and redevelop the Western Rail Yards, located between West 30th and 33rd Streets, from 11th to 12th Avenues, the related companies struck a deal with the City Council and the Hell's Kitchen community to pay for affordable housing, a public school, and open space.
In 2024, they retraded on that deal, seeking approval for a casino. After the casino bid collapsed mid last year, they retraded again for increased office space and a $2 billion public bond to pay for the platform to build on.
And what many people don't know, in December of 2025, the last month of the Adams administration, they made yet another retrade for that public bond, paid for their city real estate taxes. That public bond will now fund the already agreed upon community benefits of the affordable housing, the public school, and the open space. But to top it off, they made their lease payments to the MTA for the land to be covered by the public bond. End of day, the public funds the community benefits, and the 4,000 apartments that are built there, only 15% or 625 of them will be affordable. The final public bond is not yet approved.
What will you do to get the mayor and city council to deliver a better deal for the city and the local community?
So my view, Carl Wilson's view, is that a public bond is something that can be used to fund expensive public infrastructure pieces, like a platform, like a $2 billion platform. I think the community board agrees with that. That's how it should be narrowly tailored. It cannot be an opportunity to privately, quietly shift private responsibilities onto the backs of the public. I would urge Mayor Mondami, Comptroller Mark Levine, Speaker Julie Menon, and the full force of the City Council to apply very strict scrutiny to this before any public bond is issued. It is not, in my view, a good use of public funds, especially when there is a giant debt crisis that we are experiencing right now, to use that to pay for things like a park, school, or lease payments to the MTA, which should be shouldered by related. That is not how public bonds are meant to be intended to use. And I would want to work very closely with my friends at the community board and the speaker and the comptroller who've endorsed me, by the way, in this race, and work with the mayor to make sure that we are getting the most bang for our buck when we're using public dollars. But it's not acceptable to shift private programs into the public.
So this was happening a little bit behind the scenes here. This was behind closed doors a little bit. City Council passed a resolution at the end of last year that's saying that they approved it, this, or that this was acceptable. Some of us did not know this. When I found out from outside sources, I called Paul Devlin is actually back there, co-chair of our land use committee. I called Joe and I said, get this on the community board committee now. We have to talk about it. We have to put it in the open. We have to have people, hear about this. I agree with Carl. I think there are moments when, the bonding can be used for something like a platform for living. But this is a bigger issue we're seeing, I believe, with agreements with developers, is that they are leaving the public benefit for last all the time in their developments. The Western Rail Yards agreement was years and years and years ago, right? We're on the last phase and we yet to see the school. We have yet to see the green open spaces. I mean, it's always the last part. And then when they get to the last part, all of a sudden they can't do it. All of a sudden they don't have the money. That is what we have to combat. And that is what we have to do when we go into these agreements with these developers. We have to bake in that they have to put in the public benefits I wouldn't say first, but right at the top there, because then they can't backslide out of it. And I think that's a very, very important element, because we're not just seeing this in Hudson Yards, we're seeing this across the board with developments.
I agree in this case, the only acceptable use of public bonds is for the decking that enables large scale development on a whole and that benefits the public. And a lot of developers end up being asked and put in their agreements to do public schools, and the majority of them, or a lot of them, have never put in the schools. There's really no accountability. This is not just happening at Hudson Yards. This is happening all over the city, and there is no accountability for that process. I think the natural extension of the bad landlords conversations is taking on the biggest developers where necessary. Related, as we all know, is probably going to come up or may come up in several conversations tonight. We have several connections with them. They do not want to have a broader problem with the city as a whole. This is an opportunity to hold them accountable, particularly in this project. And they should be. I mean, bond capacity should be for enabling city development that will not otherwise get done, not to give developers a leg up in their profits.
So I think this is the epitome of why the public-private partnership really doesn't work. It doesn't. The cross-subsidization is a lie and it's a scam. And this is exactly what we're seeing here. You know, I would argue that I think that these deals were made not really exactly behind closed doors. I mean, I remember reading the resolution that was passed by the city council, in which it was mentioned that bonds would be issued. And I think that, you know, there was a lack of leadership. And this is very unfortunate. This is really very unfortunate. It happened in December of 2025. There was plenty of opportunity to actually really, you know, be focused on this issue. We knew that Related was going this route. I think that, you know, issuing bonds and having the city on the hook is already what happened with Hudson Yards, phase 1. It cost the city $2 billion. The new school actually did a thorough review, and you know, the city was on the hook. It was incredibly expensive. It is much more cost effective to actually pay for these programs ourselves with our tax dollars and make sure that we are not cross-subsidizing, because the profit is privatized and the risk is mutualized. And this is something that we cannot continue doing. As a council member, I will make sure that this deal is entirely struck. By the way, the bonds are issued by HDC, the Housing Development Corporation. They have a board, and I will make sure I speak with the board, I meet with the board, and I make sure that these bonds are not issued. We cannot be on the hook for this setup.
Lindsey, you mentioned the bad landlords conversation, and we're going to now continue that conversation. Okay. There are currently a growing number of rent stabilized buildings across District 3 owned by slumlords like Peter Hungerford, Steve Croman, Daniel Ohop Shalom, that are facing serious financial distress. What would you do to help steward those buildings to stable finances while protecting the tenants who live in them?
And these are with bad landlords currently, yes. I mean, I think there are two things, twofold. We have to first make sure that tenants are secure in their homes. HPD is working closely with each of the tenants, understanding what the financing issues are, and bringing those folks, in some cases, even these developers or real estate property owners are bidding on other city projects. So there's really very little accountability here. I would host city council meetings where we call folks to hearings, bring back that prospect that we used to do in city council or have the capacity to do, embarrass them as necessary, and move forward, but ensuring with HPD that none of the tenants themselves bear the brunt of these challenges. And that is a way that property owners try to get their tenants out. Just wait them out. And that is a tactic that they use. And we have to have our own tactics to fight back. And I think it's unfortunately bringing them in front of city council, making sure they're well known for their work, and pushing back in every case, but ensuring that in that process that we're not making an example of the tenants that are so, vulnerable in this position where they are.
I think that there's actually lots of tools that we could implement. The first one is we need to pass COPA. That's the first one. COPA is the bill that would actually support community land trust. In instances like that, tenants should be able to actually buy the building. And in order to do that, and the reason why tenants cannot do that is because they don't have access to capital. So what I would do is that I would propose that HPD and HDC create a loan, a 1.5% or 0% loan, so that tenants who are in this situation are actually able to acquire their building, and maybe they can, then rent the commercial space that will provide revenue so that they can sustain the maintenance of the building. There are ways to actually provide the support to the tenants so that they can get out of, this tyranny of the slumlords. What I would do also is that there's actually a great state bill that basically says that a tenant cannot be evicted if there are a number of violations that are pending. And this is a wonderful state bill. I would partner, it's actually introduced by a state legislator from the area of Albany. I would partner with legislators at the state level
15 seconds.
so that we are able to actually put tools in the toolbox so that tenants are protected and that the burden is not on them to protect themselves. Because I think that this is incredibly onerous for tenants when they actually have to go through these processes.
So unfortunately, I'm familiar with a lot of these landlords because in my role at the council, I was engaged in pushing back at them and organizing tenants to fight back at this. On 46th Street, 410 and 412 West 46th Street, the advocacy. Yes, right across the street. That's right. The advocacy of the conjoined effort of our office and the community board, that actually resulted in that owner going to jail. And then on 25th Street, we were, in that scenario, we were able to identify a buyer that is services for the underserved, that is much more willing to work with the tenants and improve conditions. But both of these processes are unbelievably onerous. They, as you said, it puts a lot of burden on the tenants to organize themselves and fight back. There has got to be easier ways to take buildings that are not being maintained or being used as harassment dens. There's got to be easier ways to take them out of the possession of those landlords. This mayor has said that they're going to have a new, a new look at how to do this. This needs to be a priority because the urgency is now, and there's people living there that are suffering. So I think working through community land trust and some HDFC financing models are ways out, but at the end of the day, we've got to make it easier to punish the bad landlords and take the buildings away from them.
So I'm gonna agree with Lindsey and Carl, and I'm not gonna agree a little with I think we cannot put the burden on the tenants. We absolutely cannot put the burden on the tenants to organize and to make it themselves. This is an unbelievably onerous, it's a unbelievably onerous situation. I agree with Lindsey. They do this as a tactic. They do this as a measure. This is not by accident. They're doing it on purpose to get tenants out. Okay, and then we all have to understand that. And also what Carl said is right. We have to hold them more accountable. The punishments have to be harsher. We have to have more oversight on them. Yes, I mean, it would be great if every tenant that has a bad landlord situation can mobilize and the tenants can get together and do that. That's just not what's happening. And these tenants do not have the resources. They do not have the time. They don't have, they just don't. They're working and they're afraid. Thank you. And they're afraid. So I think it's very difficult to say, let's get the tenants like mobilized and going. I think that's tough. I think we should be doing it for them. I think we should be giving them the mechanisms to do that as well. So yes, I think that they're doing it on purpose. They're doing it as a lever, and I think there should be definitely more enforcement and oversight on that.
And if any of you want to increase funding for organizations like HCC, the organization, then no one's going to disagree with that.
Sorry, yes, absolutely.
So we're gonna end with one very simple and easy question. Chelsea Mansion demolition and replacement. And redevelopment. In 2020, there was an overall community plan to renovate and preserve the Chelsea NYCHA buildings through the PACT program and convert them from Section 9 public housing to Section 8 privately controlled housing. This type of renovation plan has been completed or is underway at NYCHA locations at 631 buildings and 28,580 apartments across the city. That's information from NYCHA itself.
So in 2021, with related companies chosen as the developer, that plan was then changed to demolish and replace the existing 2,056 apartments with 6 new buildings, adding 3,454 apartments in 15 buildings with 2,418 market rate and 1,064 affordable apartments. During the past 5 years, that plan has been subject of division and disagreement within the NYCHA tenant body and throughout the Chelsea community. The plan is now tied up in court actions. Now the Mamdani administration has recently stated in the press that this type of demolition and renovation plan should be the first of many around the city.
That was replacement plan. Do you support the administration's new plan for demolition and replacement of public housing as a means of expanding housing citywide?
Talk about a slumlord. NYCHA is the worst landlord in New York City. I staunchly oppose demolition of public housing. I have, from day one, I've been standing by the side of tenants all the way. The project is really a disgrace. It has no redeeming quality. It has already caused so much harm. It will cause further harm if it moves forward. We found out that the soil is heavily contaminated. The pollutants are going to be released in the air. Mitigation plan is, we haven't seen it, so we don't know if it's adequate or not. Probably it isn't. I am staunchly in favor of protecting and saving Section 9. I believe that the narrative around the fact that Section 9 has been disinvested from at the federal level is actually not an argument that is receivable. This is entirely changeable. What we see as a lack of political will, and this is the end of it. And with a different type of political will, we will be able to accomplish all of the above, saving public housing, keeping tenants in their homes, including seniors. Yes, Miss You Story, I see you. And making sure that we are promoting more housing, but it cannot be at the expense of this public housing.
So I support the goal of the plan, which is to deliver new homes for folks who live in NYCHA, because it is what they need and it is what they deserve. I do not think it is right to say that Section 9 is going to fund this, because it isn't and has not. Even when there was a Democratic president and 2 Democratic chambers of Congress, it did not happen. There is no signs that are saying that it will happen with what we have right now. We have to shape this plan. We have to work together as a community to do it. People have already moved. It is underway. There are recommendations by Community Board 4 that I think need to, should be given serious consideration and be applied to the plan. I think that there should be any financial product from this should be put in something like a Chelsea NYCHA reserve fund. I think there could be significant capital upgrades for PS 33. I think the design and the context of the building should look and feel like Chelsea, and we can work to deal with the height and massings as identified by Community Board 4. I think we can get a lot of affordable apartments on any mixed use, and we should fight for that. We should also fight for a way to allow for NYCHA residents to live in any of the buildings that are there.
15 seconds.
So this is something that is going to require a lot of attention. I have worked on this a lot. We need everybody together as a community pushing in the same direction. And I want to facilitate those conversations. I want to bring all the stakeholders to the table. And so we're all working together in partnership. We need to hit a reset on that. And that's what I intend to do.
So, I mean, we get asked this question every single forum, right? So we all we're pretty consistent with our answers. I would say this, I do think that I am not in full agreement with this plan. I do think when it's privatization of public housing, it's a very, very slippery slope. And I think we have to be very, very aware of what goes on with that. I do think that Related in the Mix puts an added charge in this. I do think they do not have a very good reputation with our community. They don't have a good relationship with our community at all. I think we have to protect, the main thing is we have to protect the tenants to have the exact same protections that they had from Section 9 going to Section 8. But I agree with Carl. Section 9, it is getting disinvested. We're seeing it go down. We see the bank account going down. NYCHA is over $60 billion in the hole. They have over 60,000 tickets. The tickets that you do for bad plumbing or anything are going unanswered because they don't have the resources to fix anything. And people cannot live in these conditions. So I do think that, I don't agree with the market rate housing. That is very, very scary when you're gonna have market rate and luxury housing on public land. That is a very, very scary proposition to me. And I think that is a faulty model for sure. But we do not, there is no money in Section 9. There is no money. Carl is 100% right. Even under the Democratic president and Congress, they were disinvesting. And that's only because New York is very unique with Section 9. It's not throughout the country. There's no really Section 9 throughout the country, not because they don't like us or anything. It's just that it's not prevalent. So they're moving to Section 8. And that's what we have to navigate. And I think it's a real system we have to navigate. I think it's true.
Just the scale of the amount of money you're talking about is almost an annual budget for New York City. That's how much has been disinvested. So just that is. I do weekly office hours in front of Hudson Guild, and what I hear more than, I will tell you, the no demolition conversation is Section 9 to Section 8 and the concern around that. People are very afraid about what's going to happen to them. They don't know what is real. They, for good reason, not because they're not smart people. They're perfectly smart people. They just hear so many conflicting things and it's not fair to them. One thing I hear a lot is that we never voted on this. We got a survey. It was a yes or no, explain one alternative, not what the rest of the city is getting, which is stay with Section 9, hope for funding that I will say is not coming anytime soon. Housing Preservation Trust, which I think is a much more interesting model here because it maintains the public nature of NYCHA and also supplies funding and makes the accountable partner, the city and NYCHA itself. And then RAD Pact. People never had the options explained to them. What I hear most is that, the confusion around that. And also, why are you moving me to an apartment that has been refurbished if then I have to move again and this has to be demolished? There is so much fear and it's people's
15
homes.
seconds.
And so I think there should be a vote if there's possible, if this plan does go forward. I have no indication that it is not. We need to fully force all of the legal support we can for right to counsel to hold Related accountable.
Time's up.
I think we need to be preparing for that as well, because that's the
Have one follow-up question, and we'll just have 1 minute answers on it. Again, the plan for RAD Pact renovation of public housing is at 631 buildings and 28,000 apartments today, not maybe or planned, either done or constructed, right? Why is Chelsea different? Why is Chelsea different? And why can nothing be done that has been done around the entire city except for this piece of information that the administration said? This is a new plan to demolish and replace public housing citywide. So for us who live in this neighborhood, Chelsea, Harborview Terrace, Amsterdam houses, the concern is if we allow this plan in this version to proceed, what happens to the rest of the city? There are people who lived in a community. This is not buildings, this is our communities. Thousands and thousands of people who have lives there for 50 and 60 years.
Yes.
What are your thoughts? Why
Well,
here? Why here?
I don't hear a resounding support for RAD Pact writ large in the city. And unfortunately, the Chelsea Working Group was one of the original test cases. And from what I hear, by all accounts, it was a test case of what not to do, in part because of what I just said about the misunderstanding around the options, not explaining all the options, a survey versus a vote that never actually revealed all of the options. So this has become a cautionary tale. I don't think anyone that I've spoken to in housing where I worked would describe it as otherwise. I do think housing preservation trusts are a model that is worthy of looking to. Otherwise, we're relegating our NYCHA housing residents to no budget, no federal money incoming, and a state budget that has no interest in even supporting that beyond trying to tax the rich. So it's just not coming, and I think it's unfair to suggest it is. I think there are other alternatives besides Rat Pact, and I don't believe that the administration has said they're all for this model moving forward.
So listen, last week, Tuesday, public hearing, city council, budget hearing, NYCHA said it very clearly, this demolition is their model. This is what they want to scale up, okay? So let's not fool ourselves. It's not just for Chelsea. This is the model that they want to scale up. Let's focus for one quick second on the difference between Section 8 and Section 9. Pact, trust is Section 8. Section 8 is privatization. The only true public housing is Section 9. And when I hear people say that there is no funding for Section 9, it is simply that there is no desire to fund Section 9. There's nothing, it's not a natural law. You can decide that you're going to allocate your funding if we go and fight for it. So I think it's also important to understand that public housing tenants have actually consistently voted against Section 8, whether it is the trust or Rat Pact. We had Jacob Rees last year, another example very recently, and Caution Retail. NYCHA, it seems, has decided, I'll just finish on that, has decided to actually not submit the vote. This is actually what they're telling tenants in Gowanus, that now they will go Rat Pact without a vote. So I think we have to be very, very clear on what is at stake.
Well, a city council member is not going to secure federal funding from Section 9. And that's, you're in the wrong race, unfortunately. There's a congressional one going on right now. We have to live in reality here about what is in front of us. But it just hasn't happened. It hasn't happened at all over decades. The capital needs are great. I've been in these apartments. I've worked with constituents in these apartments for up to 10 years. That water stopped working on Thanksgiving one day. I'm called repeatedly about the heat and hot water being out in the coldest days of winter. The type of renovation that would need to be done there would be down to the studs. We're fighting about one building moving. Everyone would have to move twice. Everyone, if we did a top to bottom renovation. So we just have to be clear-eyed about what is the least disruptive way to do this, because we all agree the status quo is not acceptable.
So I am not gonna to continue, trying to convince people this is right, this isn't right, because everyone has their opinion, right? Everyone is kind of put their stake in the sand on this, for sure. Right, I think there is a lot of misinformation going on both sides. I think there's a lot of, and I think people are buying into that misinformation. I think that's very scary. I would like to say, though, to Joe's specific follow-up, there is a Rat Pact going on in the Upper West Side, no demolition.
Correct.
No demolition. So there is a Rat Pact going on the Upper West Side. I was actually in a meeting about that. I'll tell you why later, but I was in a meeting about that last week. So I don't want to get into why it's good, why it's not good.
15 seconds.
But I do think it is a disturbing statement when the mayor's office says that this is going to be the new normal. I think that's when we should all open our eyes, because I don't think this should be, definitely not the new normal for sure. But that, yeah, I mean, I will, can I end with one more thing though? Can I end with one more thing? I did on the community board just recently though, to address a lot of these issues, create a NYCHA working group with internal the community board, so we can address different issues, so we can have a communications hub, so we can get elected officials to the table to tell the tenants what's going on, because that is not, or has not happened, and that is not happening.
We are now at the closing statements.
Oh, no.
We're gonna, do you want a lightning? Well, you'll have to leave. We can do a lightning. Okay. Get ready.
Hope we didn't make a mistake this time. Okay. Lightning round. Are you a renter or an owner?
Oh,
God.
Co-op, owner. When I was young, I bought in a renter.
Owner.
Renter.
What's your favorite restaurant in Hell's Kitchen?
I love Il Melograno on 10th Avenue. That is my favorite.
If coffee shop qualifies, Amy's bread and their olive cake, oh, so good.
I have to say Amy's bread too. I'm a donut pastry person, honestly.
I think Jim and Maya will kill me if I didn't say Sullivan Street Bakery. But I will say Derek Crumb because Thai food is my thing right now.
Yeah, this one's gonna be tough to keep to a short answer, but let's keep it one sentence if possible. Would you terminate the ICE parking lot contract in Hudson River Park now? Or do we have to wait till it's over?
Yes. Yes.
Went on.
Yes, and every day I will continue to protest until they end the contract.
Yes.
Yes, you're right.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Well, these days I have to be a morning person, but I definitely am more of a inclined to be a night owl.
Insomniac, both ends. Morning person.
Night person, but I have to get up at 6:15 to take my daughter to school.
Okay, estimate in Hell's Kitchen, what does a 1-bedroom and a 3-story walk-up rent for, roughly?
Wow, oh, that's good. Where are we talking? The historic? I would say, give me a 1-bedroom walk-up. Let's go 1,800.
2,500.
2,800.
No.
Well, I live in a walk-up rental, so it's around depending on where you are, it's probably between 4,000 and 5,000.
Starts at 3,500. Starts at 3,500, goes up to 4,500.
I'm behind.
Do you support a rent freeze for rent stabilized tenants? Yes or no?
Yes.
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 Absolutely.
Okay, another math estimate question. In Hell's Kitchen, what does a 1-bedroom in a new high-rise go for? Third floor. Yeah, 1 bedroom, 1 bedroom. Yeah. Yeah.
$10,000.
$8,000.
So when we were looking to move, we were looking at one point before, we were looking at like Mercedes House, and I think it was somewhere around like
Yeah.
530, 5,300, something like that.
Actually, my friend just got one for about, actually 4.8, something like that. It was actually a little lower.
Starts at 4,600, goes to 5,500 for 1 bedroom.
Okay, I'm being myself.
So would you support a rent freeze for market rate tenants? Would you support a rent freeze for market rate tenants? Joke, my God, it's a joke, guys.
Like, can you do that?
No, no. Who is a famous person you've seen on the streets of Hell's Kitchen? Who's a famous person you've seen on the streets of Hell's Kitchen?
I got this, Balsley Park, Al Pacino. I am not kidding. Have you seen him too? Yep, he had an apartment here.
Alec Baldwin. I'm blanking out. I don't, yeah. I'll just say one thing though, I'm face blind, so maybe I saw him, but I didn't recognize him.
I saw David Byrne on a bicycle, and he was stopped at the light, and I leaned over and said, "On the road to nowhere." And then he just stepped on. He was still right. I was doing American Utopia on Broadway.
Now, what is
That's
the
the
oddest
after show.
thing you've ever encountered on the streets of Hell's Kitchen? The oddest thing.
Oddest?
Yes.
Well, okay, just the first thing that comes to mind, it was, I don't know how odd it is, but sorry, when they were doing Sunset Boulevard on Broadway, you could go over there and watch the segment where they came out of the theater and walked down the street and came back around, and I thought, and everybody would come and gather to watch it, and it was a cool, odd thing, only in New York.
Same thing, blanking out. Odd. I think I don't know that anything is odd.
The council is off.
I take it all and, I don't know. I don't.
Magic the fun.
Something for the fun. I don't know, like horses galloping on the avenue going to Central Park. Not really odd.
I think visually remembering COVID, when we were in lockdown during that time.
I do have some.
That was a dark one.
Boy, Lindsay brought the room down a little bit. I actually did have something a lot. I saw a guy dragging behind him two octopus, like the pot, which was weird. This is a while ago, and I thought maybe it was for like restaurant, but I wouldn't want it dragging on.
Well, I'll just share, I saw a 75-year-old man in a Speedo on a bicycle wearing an umbrella for a hat.
Joe, don't talk.
Okay, last question of the lightning round. This is a ranked choice election. Does anyone want to use this opportunity to endorse another candidate?
I will say we are thinking about it. And that's honest. Oh, sorry.
To be determined.
I concur.
Sorry, not making any news today.
1 minute closing statements. Carl.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you and appreciate, it's really tough to get up here and do this. So, I do a lot of affinity. We constantly be putting ourselves out there, and a happy belated birthday to you, Lindsay, and both of you for your service on the community board, and what you've done for the city. So just said, anyway, this is my home. This is my community. It has given me so much. It has given me the courage to be myself and become, a better version of myself. My partner, James, is actually here in the audience. We just celebrated 10 years together. I've been able to build a life here and come to New York with that, that old cliche, a little backpack and a dream, and really build something, and something that I'm proud of. And I want to fight for that New York for everybody. I want a New York where that kid can come here with a dream, or the kid that's born here with a dream can stay and build a life. We have work to do to fight for that New York, but I know that in coalition and working together, in taking care of our neighbors, putting our community first, that we can accomplish those goals. So I want to do that, continue to build on what I've done in the council, working every day, block by block, to serve this community, use the mechanisms of government, use the legislative process and the community relationships to deliver results. And that's what I'm going to be focused on if I'm lucky enough to be a council member. Thank you.
The stakes are so high for this district, has never been so high. There is a displacement agenda that is hard at play. We see it. We see people of color being displaced. We see low-income people being displaced, and it's seniors being displaced, not able to age in place. And this is the reason why I am running. I think that the status quo is not serving us. These policies that 20 years ago may have been good for the district are no longer working. We need something new. We need something different. We need a different approach, different ideas, but also a different style. We need to make sure that we are able to preserve what we cherish. And this is why I am running, and I would be honored to have your support and to have your trust so that we can really get to work. Thank you.
With everything going on at the federal level, I think this is a really exciting time for municipal government. This is the one place where we can fight back against everything that is happening to us. There's a reason why fascism came to the fore, and it's not just because Trump was on TV and pretended like he was richer than he is. It was because some people wanted to believe that a used car salesman could answer their problems and blame someone else for them. Immigrants in this case, our LGBTQI+ community in this case, women in this case. And I think part of the way forward is in municipal government, both fighting back against fascism directly and all these harmful policies that the president is trying to put into place. And then secondly, actually delivering on affordability because people have lost hope. And I think in this mayor's race, people actually said, we want something different. We're betting on something different, on delivering a different outcome. What a more exciting time could we find to go into city government and do that? And I would love to work with you. While I live in Chelsea, my heart will be in Hell's Kitchen too, and thank you for your leadership on housing.
I do want to say a lot of you know me, but I am very, very proud that I really came up from the community. I mean, this community and my public service in the community really shaped me. And it shapes a lot of the work that I do, whether it's on the community board, whether it's on the block association, whether it's on HKNC. I think I was activated during COVID when I really saw a collective failure of our government to take care of the people that we love, whether it's the arts community, whether it was the LGBT community, whether it was the unions, the elderly. I mean, we saw COVID really expose that. And I think that's what activated me. And it's really made me want to pour myself into public service. You know, I've worked with a lot of you here on many issues, whether that's getting electric shore power to clean our dirty air at the cruise terminal, or whether that's to fight the casinos. We had 3 in our area that was looming on us. Whatever, I was also on the launch advisory committee to getting free childcare here in New York City, where we are celebrating big wins. So I really want to thank you guys because you have really molded me over these last few years. And I would love to curve those successes up to the next level and be your city council person. I would be receptive. You would always have you would always have a seat at my table and my door will always be open. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I want to thank everybody, but let's thank these candidates first. They sat here in this discussion. Come on, guys. Thank you all for coming. Any of your friends who haven't seen this, we're playing YouTube. We'll send you the information and they can pass it along. Thanks for coming out tonight.